Welcome to the Managing Happiness Show, episode number 6, where we interview successful entrepreneurs on how they maintain a happy family life while dealing with the madness of entrepreneurship. We talk about family, business, and everything in between. My guest today is Florio, the founder of FoxyCart, which is rebranded to Foxy.io now. Brett bootstrapped the business with his business partner, and he's married and has 3 beautiful daughters. And he's a friend of mine from the early MaxCDN days. He used to live in LA and he moved to Austin, Texas, and he's touring the US with his RV 6 months out of the year, which is pretty amazing. I'd love to do that. And I'm very curious to hear how he's managing productivity and work on these trips. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's start with talking about Foxy.io. Brett, happy to have you on the show.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
So give us a little overview on Foxy.io. What do you guys do?
Foxy is an e-commerce platform built to add e-commerce functionality to existing systems. So 10 years ago when we launched, the ecosystem was obviously very different than it is now. If you wanted to, let's say, use your CMS of choice or build a site from scratch, you didn't have a lot of the options that you have now. So we built Foxy to be able to say, look, whatever you want to use, whatever language you want to use, whatever framework, whatever CMS, you can add e-commerce to it. So Foxy is not a CMS. It doesn't do product catalogs. It doesn't do a lot of the things that you might expect, let's say, from Shopify. What it does do is provide a way to add items to the cart, to give you a persistent cart, and to give a very flexible checkout and payment flow. We have almost 100 different payment providers integrated, anti-fraud systems, different live tax rate providers, live shipping, discounts, coupons, etc., with PCI compliance. So you can do exactly what you want to do, get custom e-commerce without having to build all of the stuff that you need for e-commerce. You focus on what you want to do best and let Foxy do the rest, the transactions, the security, recurring billing, etc. And we launched 10 years ago, and we have been happy to carve out a niche over the last decade, and we are continuing to have fun with it and help people sell their products and services to users all over the world.
So I guess you're very developer focused, so a change to .io was a very logical move, and taking the cart out of Foxy.
The change to drop the cart had to do with one of our large enterprise users said they did an integration, they signed up, we said, oh wow, you're a very large name, everybody knows who you are. Do you need any help? They said, no, we got it. And it was kind of a funny situation. They really didn't need any support at all, which is quite the opposite of most of our super large enterprise users. But they ended up doing an integration without the cart. So they were really using Foxy mostly just for the checkout flow, the PCI compliance, etc. And that was becoming increasingly common and increasingly popular use case. So because of that, and also because FoxyCart draws comparisons to other e-commerce platforms with cart in the name, that Foxy really is very different from. So rather than trying to say, oh, even though our name evokes these other comparisons, we're not really like that, we figured we would just go with Foxy, and we're in the process of rebranding from FoxyCart to Foxyio. But ultimately, it's the same service, it's the same systems, and it's the same functionality. Although we've added a lot more over the years, obviously.
We rebranded MaxCDN as well at some point with 4 brands. We had NetDNA, our original brand, and we had MaxCDN, HDDN, and Cloud Cache, and bringing everything together into one brand and rebranding was quite a lot of work. So I know for you must have been not easy as well.
Yes.
You bootstrapped the business as well. As we bootstrapped MaxCDN as well. Was a cool experience, and I would prefer to always bootstrap my businesses to have control. What was your experience bootstrapping? Like, what are the pros and cons?
I think bootstrapping was fantastic for us, but it certainly is a very different approach. I think bootstrapping for us worked really well because we were scratching our own itch. We knew what we wanted. We were targeting developers, not less technical merchants that would have required potentially a much larger initial build, more outlay for marketing, etc. So bootstrapping worked really well. We've really been able to grow over the last 10 years. We've done effectively no real marketing, traditional marketing. We started experimenting with an AdWords campaign just earlier this year, and that's the first time we've ever done any sort of pay-per-click. So I think bootstrapping was great. It allowed us to grow. It certainly allowed this sort of family life and personal dynamics that I've really come to enjoy over the last decade. On the other hand, I do think it's a very different approach from raising money. Obviously, you have a lot more control. I think in the best situation, bootstrapping, you would be able to assemble a good number of advisors and help you. I think that when you raise, again, in good situations, when you raise capital, you get that built in that comes with the capital because people with ostensibly more experience than you want to make sure that their money is being used well. I think that's probably one of the things that I worry about with folks bootstrapping is.
That's actually a very good point. Like, we engage with mentors later on once we are already at a, fairly decent size. And if we would have done this earlier, this would have had a giant impact on our business. We got so many things wrong. I mean, we got a lot of things right because we've been very successful, but simple things like having a mission and a vision statement, for example, for our business I always thought, like, screw this stuff. Like, who needs this? I'd rather ship some product. Like, why would you do stupid stuff like this, right? This ends up on the website somewhere or in some PowerPoint presentation and nobody cares about this. But later on, we found out that this was actually really crucial for us, for our success. So, do you operate under a vision and mission at Foxy?
We do. Over the years, we've done a number of different things, been involved in different groups. I was in a Vistage group for a while, and my business partner was in a comparable group, and then a sort of a different group locally. So we've tried to seek counsel and advice from experienced people, and that's been very helpful. To your point, though, about vision and mission, I think a lot of times what I see from folks who are wanting to start a business or looking to do something or thinking about raising capital is this huge focus on the business plan. And I think it's interesting you didn't mention that. I think the vision and mission are far more valuable than imaginary things that you put on paper and you say, oh, at month 24 we're going to have this much revenue. Well, yeah, probably not, right?
Yeah, either most likely a lot more or a lot less. Either way.
Yeah, and probably statistically a lot less on average.
Yeah. I personally believe that having a mission statement, a vision statement, maybe not necessarily a vision statement, but a mission statement for yourself has been very impactful for me. For example, like I use it the same way you use it in a business for making decisions. Like since we sold MaxCDN and I have, more time on my hands, people approach me and ask me, hey, do you want to do this business together? Do you want to consult? Do you want to mentor? Do you want to invest? And I always run the decision that I would make through my personal mission statement and see if it's in line with what I actually want to do and what I want to accomplish while I'm here on this planet. And by using this filter, it makes it much easier for me to say no, even though, like sometimes I would just do it because it's a good money opportunity or I like the person. So for me, it has been very, very helpful. Do you have something like this?
I do, and it actually came from the business though. So in our early days, again, we bootstrapped. I had a different company. My business partner had a full-time job, and we didn't even have the same sort of expectations of what Foxy might grow into eventually. He was coming at it from, this is, at first from, well, this would be a fun project and I want to help my friend. And then, well, maybe if it could make enough money on the side for my wife to quit her job. And then, eventually, well, I could quit my job and do this. So early on, we sat down and we said, what do we want out of our lives, and how can working together in this business get us there? And we did do sort of vision statements, goals. We called them primary aims at the time. And one of my goals was to, looking at it right now, be mobile, able to travel the world while giving my children the most amazing education available. And that was the first thing I put on there. And
That's awesome.
And that has guided the business in a sense that what I want out of my life is to be able to move around, and obviously that plays a lot into having a remote company and how we're operating and such.
And touring the US in an RV 6 months out of the year.
Yes, well, in Canada as well. We don't go south of the border. At least not in the RV.
That's awesome. You just mentioned you have a business partner, and one quote that you brought up when we talked before the call is, you spend more time with your business partner than you spend time with your spouse in most business situations. And how do you pick your business partner, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, what you just said there, that you spend more time with your business partner than you do with your spouse, is something that was said to me when I was in the entrepreneurship program at USC, which is a fantastic program. And we had entrepreneurs come in every week and talk to the classes. And over again, entrepreneurs would say, if there's one thing that I can tell you, if there's one thing that you take away from this, it's be careful who you get into partnerships with. And somebody said that you spend more time with your business partner than you do with your spouse. And they also said that your business partner has usually at least as much capacity to wreak havoc on your life, to disrupt it, both emotionally, financially, etc. So, and my spouse refers to my business partner as my other spouse, and when my business partner and I argue in Slack, when I say argue, I mean constructive things. I mean things where we might disagree on how to implement something or what a priority should be, and our team recognizes that mommy and daddy are fighting, which I don't want to sound like our company is run like a family. I think that's a topic that we're kind of discussing, but the relationship between business partners can be wonderful or it can be awful. And my first business ended in a very strife-filled way because I didn't trust my gut. I said, well, this person is really good in these areas. I don't trust him. He's got these major flaws. I wouldn't want to do X, Y, and Z with him, but I can overlook that and we can try to make this work. And I think I learned, thankfully when I was younger and the stakes were lower, I learned that you can't do that. With business partnerships, I don't think compromises really can be made. I haven't seen them. There's just too much at risk, and life's too short to do that.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Life can end at any moment. We just had an earthquake here in Bodrum, 6.7 magnitude. So it was another reminder that life can really end very, very fast. Mm-hmm. In Germany, there's a saying which is very like in America this would not fly. It's very discriminative. Like what's the word for this? Discriminating people. And in Germany they say if somebody doesn't take care of himself well, let's say he is extremely overweight, or he drinks excessively, or takes drugs excessively, or has, I don't know, like body odor problems, or what are other examples for this? Well, if somebody has, or let's say he's unfaithful to his wife in mm-hmm. extreme manners. If somebody has these traits, then don't do business with them. Mm-hmm. Because like this is kind of a sign that they don't have their life as a whole under proper control.
Right. So I've seen similar things in Quora, for example, where you can, if you observe how somebody treats somebody else who would be below them or whose opinion doesn't matter, such as a server at a restaurant or something like that. If they don't respect people whose opinions they don't think matter, I would consider that a red flag. I think certainly any sign of dishonesty, I would consider a major red flag, because if you see if somebody's fine with lying about little things, let's say, well, where does that stop? If someone's fine with lying to someone else, well, how do you know they won't lie to you? I think honesty is huge.
If they cheat on their wives, like they would cheat on you in a heartbeat, type of thing, like in a business situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Since we kind of transitioned over from the business section to the yourself section, one question I want to ask you is, because I'm a book nerd that dropped out of school at a very early age, and I'm always looking for new good books to read. So the question is, what are the books that influence you the most in your life? And then also, what's the last book that you've read?
Great question. I'm glad that I had some time to think about that beforehand, but the three books that have influenced me the most, at least those that come to mind, one of them is Brave New World, which in the context of the other two choices, I think will make more sense. The other two are Unconditional Parenting by Alfie Kohn and Free Will by Sam Harris, which is a small read, and I know that he can be a controversial name, but Free Will really gave me a much greater understanding and empathy towards everybody, really. The idea that, let's say, I have worked so hard, I'm where I am in life because I'm special. I don't necessarily believe that. I'm at where I am in life because I had a lot of advantages. Unconditional Parenting, back to Free Will real quick, also it changed my view of the justice system. I think retributive justice is not where we want to be. Unconditional Parenting is an interesting book. I was actually reading Drive at the time by Dan Pink, and my wife was reading Unconditional Parenting, and it's a lot of the same topics with Alfie Kohn talking about about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation from a parenting perspective, and Dan Pink talking about it from a business perspective. The reason why Wikipedia succeeded while Encarta didn't is ultimately the same reason why certain types of parenting strategies, certain types of psychology or psychological approaches, I guess, make more sense and get better results. Big difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, and how extrinsic motivators can erode intrinsic motivation. So that book was hugely influential.
Actually, I'm such a huge fan of focusing on being intrinsically motivated. I think it's, when you're intrinsically motivated, let's say, and tell me if you think that's the same thing. I'm big on love and fear, making decisions out of love and not out of fear. And if you, let's say, I'm a sales guy, I want to sell you something, and if I sell you, if I'm intrinsically motivated to help you, or let's say I sell out of love, because I know that's a good product and that this is something that will make your life better, then would you say this is intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation is motivated by fear, thinking about the money that I make off the sale, the mortgage that I have to pay, the numbers that I have to reach?
In a sense, yes. The biggest distinction, let's say, I think it's tricky sometimes to think about things from a behavioralist perspective, where you think about punishments and rewards, right? So you could think that, well, fear would be, a threat, a punishment, whereas praise would be a reward. Both of those would be extrinsic motivators if they were being applied by somebody else, whereas intrinsic motivation would be the desire to do something without any external motivation. So it's a really interesting topic. I think one example would be chimps and puzzles. You can give a chimp a puzzle and they'll solve it on their own because they're intrinsically motivated to, and this has been done in research and studies and such. But once you start applying an extrinsic motivator like a grape, now the chimp's intrinsic motivation has eroded, and if you give the chimp a puzzle without the grape, it won't do the puzzle anymore. I mean, to your point about love and fear, I certainly think that's fantastic. I don't want to sound like I'm disagreeing with you there.
But thank you for the book tips. I'll definitely get them.
Yeah.
ASAP. Put them on.
And Brave New World in the context of those, well, I think it makes sense just in the absence of free will, in the overwhelming overwhelming influence of environment and the world in which we find ourselves. I think it's an interesting exploration of some of those themes.
I'll definitely put them into the show notes. Talking about kind of how to raise your kids, and you tour through the US several months out of the year, and with your 3 kids and your wife, and you're homeschooling, which is pretty amazing. And tell me a little bit about how this is working.
Yeah, happy to. So we homeschool. That's obviously a big tent. There are lots of different ways to do that. Some other things, some other terms that people use that we might fall under would be world schooling or road schooling or unschooling, with really a focus on helping our kids learn what they want to learn without threats and punishments and such, and also without rewards as much as we can. Again, because those are kind of two sides of the same behavioralist coin.
Road schooling, is this because you're on the road, or is this something just like learned from the...
Yeah, I mean, We're on the road. It's really a lot easier to homeschool while we're traveling. We tend to move around a fair amount every week, every other week. So, wherever we are, whatever region, there tend to be larger themes. So if we're spending months in the southwest of the United States, there's a tremendous amount of history that we can get into. We were, in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. We're looking at different ruins going back a thousand years or more, and they're saying, oh, they're macaw feathers, but macaws weren't native to here. They couldn't breed here. They were brought up live and from Central America, from Mexico. There were these trade routes. So there's so much to do and so many museums. So traveling really makes it a bit easier. It's harder sometimes for me personally when I have to do something and, my family's going to this amazing place, this national park or monument or museum or talk or what have you. And I can't go. I just really need to get some work done. So it can be hard in that sense.
Talking about getting work done, how do you actually get work done? Like, because your wife takes the kid out of the house, quote unquote, out of the RV, and then they do stuff, and so you have time to work, or how does this work? And what are the biggest pain points of being on the road while working?
Yeah, our RV is on the larger side. There's a separate the bedroom in the back. I've created a standing desk, so I'm pacing back and forth on my little foam mat. So typically I'll work out of the RV, depending on where we are. If the weather's nice, go outside, go to a library, go to a coffee shop. I don't drink coffee, so that's always a little bit trickier for me. And I'm picky with my tea. But typically I'll stay in the RV, and the family will be out, we'll be exploring, we'll be going around. About half of our team is not in the U.S. We have Australia, Russia, Pakistan, and we have users in Europe. So I tend to split my work days between U.S. hours and U.S. evenings, late evenings, in order to communicate with the team and, in a sense, also get more work done without the distractions that tend to come along with, working in your main time zone, right? When I'm working at 11 to 2 a.m., I don't have to worry about emails coming in constantly, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy working late as well. Like it's 11:40 p.m. right now in Bodrum here. And I kind of working with a lot of people in the US, so I guess I always have calls late at night, but I'm very productive because there's no distractions.
Right.
Nobody asking for something.
Exactly.
So, in terms of work-life balance, it looks like you have it figured out pretty well. Anything you struggle with, or any tips that you have?
Oh, I struggle with, I think, what everybody probably struggles with, just time. I do still work. My business partner and I, we don't have, it's not competitive, but it's really sort of respect for the other. There's a lot to do, and we're not just going to slack off. We have a lot to do. We enjoy what we do. We care about serving our users. We care deeply about our team and their well-being, and we want to make sure that we do what we need to do to get the business, where we want it to go for ourselves, for our team, for our users, for their customers. So that takes a lot of time. And it's hard to then find more time sometimes to do things that I really want to do with the kids. For example, I play music. I play a lot. I play bluegrass currently. And I'm teaching my kids.
What instrument do you play? Guitar, I
Currently,
guess?
I'm playing dobro. Most things with strings, but right now I'm having a lot of fun with dobro, largely because it's not the most common bluegrass instrument. So generally, if I show up with a dobro, I there's not already another dobro player, so I'll get invited to join folks playing. So it's kind of
Hmm.
a way to get invited to play without being the best at a particular instrument.
I don't even know what this instrument is. I have to look this up.
It's so there. I play square neck, so you play it kind of flat, almost on your lap or face up with a strap, and you play it with a slide. So it's almost sort of like an acoustic lap steel or pedal steel in a sense.
I have to Google this.
Yeah, but to the question, I try to play music with my kids every night. One of them's playing mandolin, one of them's playing guitar, one of them's playing ukulele because her fingers are really tiny and ukes are really really small. And that's a lot of time. If I'm going to do that can be an hour and 20 minutes to run through a few songs with each of them every night. And that's really tough. It's tough to find the time for things that I value and things that are important. But I also want the kids to run around, to play, to bike around the neighborhood, to experience the areas that we happen to be in, to be able to read, to be able to learn. So, there aren't enough hours in the day.
Do you block these things? Do you schedule them? For example, like in the evenings at 6 p.m., it's music lessons, or you play together, or is it something you always do on the fly?
There's a sort of rough schedule. I tend to, work certain hours during the day and certain hours in the evenings, try to get the kids laying down and reading to them at a certain time. But no, we don't we don't schedule things, and to the idea of sort of business and family and the similarities and differences, we don't do that a lot with Foxy either. So luckily we don't have clients, we have users, and we try to focus on the biggest pain point and get it done, get things done, get bugs fixed, ASAP, get new features out as quickly as we can. But we don't, neither personally nor in business do we adhere to super strict schedules. Well, I did mention reading to them at nighttime. The last book I finished, which I didn't tell you before, was we finished Harry Potter book 6 last night.
Okay. So you read with the kids. That's cool.
Yeah, we read a little every night to get them to sleep.
It's very interesting that you don't, apply these. Well, managing happiness is all about applying business principles to your family life, to organize your life and kind of have some certain rules and more structure. But from chatting with you, you have a very different approach on how to handle this and how to raise your kids. Could you elaborate this a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I think it is. It's not that we don't have structure necessarily, or that it's accidental. It's very deliberate, both business and personal. And my business partner and I, thankfully, are very much on the same page with this. It's not about, well, we do whatever we want whenever we want to do it. There is the philosophy behind it of, back to the mission and the vision statement that we talked about earlier. What is important to us, and what are we trying to do, and what's the best way to do that right now? And sometimes that requires longer term planning. Not to say that we don't do that, both in business and in family, but I think what we see a lot of times is adherence to a schedule because it's easy, and there are a lot of benefits. I don't want to come across as if I don't see the benefits or don't appreciate the benefits of scheduling, of long-term planning, etc. But I think a lot of times you don't want to micromanage the business and you don't want to micromanage your family. And, for us, if it's late and the kids are out doing something that, they have an opportunity to do, like where we are right now is in a wonderful city, and the kids really have the sort of freedom to bike around in and explore and be with other kids and do things that kids of their generation don't have as many opportunities to do, particularly living in urban or suburban areas. Like when I was a kid, we used to go bike around the canyon for hours and hours. We had no cell phones. We had we just would go out and explore. And that's more important right now than saying, well, we're going to stick to the schedule, and we're going to play music, and we're going to do bedtime at a certain hour. And similarly with the business.
I personally like to, same as business and in family, I like to plan. I like to be prepared. Let's say when I go into a business meeting, I like to have an agenda for this business meeting and kind of know what I want to get done. But I'm also totally cool with throwing the agenda out and doing something completely different, to have this flexibility, similar to what you say, like, hey, if they have this opportunity to bike around or do something fun that they really enjoy, then we can throw the plan overboard. But I always like to go into battle prepared, not battle, that's kind of the wrong word with family, but just like, kind of like having an agenda, having a plan that then I'm happily throw out the window, but at least I have something to fall back on, and also with certain, planning certain things. For me, it's, I don't know, I'm a huge fan of, for example, creating habits. So I have like this habit tracker on my phone where I stick to the habits that I want to cultivate. So, and for me, it's very important to get certain things done throughout the day, like to cultivate my good habits. And if I don't plan this, then for some reason I don't do it. So I'm curious how you manage to stick to the good habits, or to stick to these things that you want to accomplish while having such a fluid schedule or plan, I guess.
Yeah, it's great phrasing, great way to think about it. With what you talked about of habits, and that's how you sort of get yourself into doing the things that. It sounds like that's how you get yourself into the things of doing, what you should be doing. Does that sound fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to cultivate my good habits. I'm a firm believer that our habits determine everything in our lives. If we're successful or broke, if we are healthy or unhealthy, if we're happy or unhappy, it's all about which habits do we cultivate. So I'm very big on that.
And what's the goal of the habits, or why you're cultivating them? To what end?
Could you say it again? You're breaking up.
Oh, you're cultivating those habits to what end?
I'm not sure I fully understand.
Like what's the goal? Like why bother with the habits? What's the purpose of doing habits?
I have, we're setting goals in 5 categories: in health, wealth, relationship, fun, and growth. And so I want to always, I have habits of working out on a regular basis. I want to run like 3 times a week, and I want to meditate every morning. And if I'm not meditating, I want to do, go to a yoga session or so. So this is all in terms of, health and well-being.
And all of that is ultimately for happiness. Is that?
Yeah, that kind of flows into happiness, or like you just, health and happiness, or I want to work a certain amount of hours on managing happiness, the podcast or the site. And or another example, I want to always do inbox 0 at the end of the day, to staying productive. And, if I don't really plan for these things, then I feel like I get a lot less done, and I end up being, not cultivating the things that are important to me.
Yeah. I think for us, with the sort of, perhaps we could call it less structure, I think the the goal is still the same, and the motivations are still the same. So I think it perhaps is less about the means to the end and more about the focus on the end and creating ways to get there. So in both business and in family, the goal is to grow. You mentioned 5 categories. I think that those, without thinking about it really, my own personal goals sort of align pretty well with those in terms of growth, wealth, health, etc. So in the business, our goal is for everybody on the team to enjoy what they do and to be able to provide for themselves and their families, and for us to do something that adds value to our users and hopefully into the world that increases well-being of the sort of net well-being of the world in whatever small way we can. So with that sort of end in mind, if we think, well, what do I want to do? Why am I doing this? Then, those habits, we say, well, we want to make sure that our users are taken care of. Well, okay, then the thing that I need to do to make sure of that is we need to have excellent support. And that needs to be the value for the company, and we get people who care about people and who want to solve problems. So I think we probably do a lot of the same things that we would do if we were really structured. And again, both in business and family, but we approach them from a perspective of, why are we doing this, and what do we want to do, and how is this going to help us towards our goals of happiness and of improving well-being, of making the world a better place.
We're very aligned in terms of the goals, like actually 100% aligned in terms of why I do the things I do. And the only thing is, like, I guess I'm a little more of a control freak. I'm very big on customer happiness and customer success. And I always think it's always about people first, like to treat our employees as, amazing. So they really love what they do. So they can be there to provide a great service to our customers and also to our partners, that we treat everybody as amazing as possible. But I also like to track this. I'm big on NPS, Net Promoter Score. Yeah. So I like to track how, is it actually the case that we treat people well? Does I want to know how each support rep is treating, how he's rated on NPS. So then we can go back and see, like, hey, you have an average of people usually rate you on give you 7 on average, and the other guy gets 10, so I can bring them together so they can compare notes and see, like, how can you improve. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's the German control freak in me that we have the same goals, but I just want to bring in the German structure to make sure that we actually deliver on what we want to accomplish.
Yeah. My own approach is I'm a much higher level in my approach to life and management. So I a lot of times wish I was better at getting more granular with those things, but that's not something I've been great at or I've had the ability to really focus on personally.
I'm not a huge metrics person. I'm not a quant, but I just fell in love with NPS because it's such an amazing tool to have the finger on the pulse of your business, and especially it's a kind of accounting for customer happiness, and since I'm so big on
which, like you said, is really ultimately critically important. I absolutely agree with your approach. If you have a happy team that cares about people, cares about your users, your customers, your partners, etc., each other, that's not competitive with each other necessarily, but cooperative, I think that gets you good results.
Have you ever measured NPS scores?
We haven't. I last time we talked a while back, I looked into it, and we have it on our roadmap of things to focus on.
Get it done.
We're doing a few
So
other things, but we will.
book recommendation in case you want to read something about NPS, The Ultimate Question 2.0. Really amazing book on how you can use NPS to run your entire business, kind of taking the feedback that you get from customers and on the detractors. So to, what they don't love about your business, you can just, create feedback loops for your dev team to, make the product better, etc. So I think but we talked about this before. I'm this crazy NPS nerd.
If it works.
Yeah, work really, really great for us at Max at the end.
Cool.
Well, man, this was really awesome. Thank you very much for your time and all the things you've shared with me and with the audience. Really cool how you approach this with raising your kids. I'd love we could pull this off with homeschooling, but doesn't really work for us and to travel a little more, but maybe at some point we'll get there. Thanks, man. Thank you for being on the show. Any parting words, any thoughts that you want to share?
I guess probably just go back to your love versus fear and how much I think that's a message that I think the world could benefit from at this point. Yeah. I appreciate that message from you.
I don't know if we talked about this in depth before. In the course, I have like a whole section on this and how much it impacted my life. And once I understood this, and I applied to business and family life and everywhere. For example, my wife always asked me to do things around the house, like home improvement stuff, and I really do not enjoy doing this type of work. And I always did it out of fear, because I didn't want to have conflict with her.
Huh.
And I hated the work, every minute of it. And then the result was also subpar because I was not doing it with love. Right. And now that I'm understanding this concept of love and fear, I still start out of fear because I still don't like it. But then I switch to love because I want to make my wife happy and I want to make our place nicer. And all of a sudden I enjoy the work and the results much better, and I don't fight with her afterwards. So it had really crazy impact on me.
That's probably fantastic to model for your kids also. I mean, you think about how much of our lives how many of our actions are rooted in fear as opposed to love. Mm-hmm. And if you can model that behavior acting based on love versus fear, I think our children will be part of a generation that makes the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when your child does something, and even if it's scary, and you act out of fear and you yell at it because you got scared, versus kind of taking the love approach and explaining why this may be dangerous also. It becomes much easier. My parents did an amazing job with this. My father always said, if you have to yell, your arguments are too weak. And we had this really amazing relationship where I could do anything, come home like with pulling the craziest stuff at school or whatever. And there was never, when we were fighting, we were talking the way we are talking right now. Mm-hmm. And so my parents were like my allies. I could come to them with anything I ever did. And was great to hear their input. There was never any fear of them. So was really fun growing up.
Yeah, I'm glad you had that. I'm glad you had that experience.
Anyhow, it was really awesome to have you on the show. Thank you very much. In case you want to implement NPS at some point in your business, I'm very happy to work with you on this and to get this implemented.
Awesome.
Just because
I think I know you're the go-to person. Well, thanks so much for having me and for having these discussions. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Take care.